Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking Logistics, where we have conversations with thought leaders and newsmakers in the supply chain logistics industry. It's my great pleasure to welcome today's program, Arne Mielken, who's Senior Global Trade and Customs Manager at E2Open. And today we're going to talk about preparing for Brexit, what supply chain leaders need to know. So, Brexit is back in the news today as we get closer to October 31st. And, that's the date that the UK is scheduled to leave the EU. That is, of course, if it doesn't get delayed again. So it's been a kind of a roller coaster ride for the past 3 years, but there's one thing that's remained the same, and that is that supply chain leaders have had to deal with ongoing risks and uncertainty. So where are we today with Brexit? What are some of those risks and uncertainty, and what can supply chain leaders do today to prepare effectively moving forward? Well, those are some of the key questions we're going to address in today's episode, and it's great to have Arne with us to kind of share his insights and advice on this topic. So Arne, welcome to the program.
Thanks. Great to be on your program. Thanks.
So Arne, we've had some of your colleagues there at E2Open on the program, over the past few years. You're a first-time guest here on Talking Logistics. I'm always curious before we dive into this, very timely and important topic of Brexit. I'm always curious in terms of how people get involved with this industry to begin with. So why don't you tell us briefly a little bit about your career path, how and why you got involved with this industry, and what your current role and responsibilities are there at E2Open?
Sure. So I'm, as you said, a Senior Global Trade and Customs Manager at E2Open, and I'm responsible for providing customer insights on the value of our products, of our global trade intelligence applications. I help to explain what products we offer, and I generally promote E2Open's next generation applications in our platform. I joined E2Open with the acquisition of Amber Road just a couple of months back. So I'm new to the field of E2Open, but I have 15 years of experience with customs, global trade, and supply chain management. So before I worked in large consultancies, Grant Thornton and Deloitte, and there I assisted clients with duty management programs, with maximizing cost-saving opportunities, with customs regimes, all that good stuff to enhance compliance. So henceforth, I work in the trade compliance field of all the beautiful applications that E2Open has. And supply chains are becoming increasingly complex constructs where demand is disconnected from supply, and the vast majority of activities that were happening once inside a company are now happening outside this company. So data resides now outside a company. And so this is really exciting for me to be involved in, because while we changed our supply chain from being internally focused to externally focused, we forgot to connect the dots. Now we don't really know where the data is, but it is so essential. And you know this from a trade compliance and customs perspective, where you need to follow stringent regulations, that you have the right data, the complete data, the accurate data, the real data, in fact, real-time data. And so all of this together, the supply chain changes, the complexity, plus the world of customs, the geeky nature of customs is exciting. And so now that I get to be at E2Open, I get to see how such a great company puts all of that together, and that's exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, and particularly this area of trade compliance, a lot of people historically have thought about it, particularly if you think about global trade management software, they thought about it as a piece of software. But in reality, I always talked about, the 3 C's of global trade, right? Which was, not only the software piece, but there was content, right? The data, the information, the regulations, and understand that, and connectivity being another C, right? Which is, the fact that there's many trading partners that are involved in a global movement, from a purchase order all the way to final delivery, that are involved in that transaction, that need to be part of the exchange of information, data, and documents, and so forth. So that's another, critical component of this. And, when we talk about Brexit, and certainly here in the United States, we talk about what's happening with the US and China. I think the one good thing that's come out of all of this is that the role of trade compliance and the role of trade compliance professionals within organizations has been elevated, because now CEOs and CFOs are knocking on the door of their trade compliance folks internally, as well as the trade compliance experts at their partners, whether they be logistics service providers or technology providers such as yourselves, to kind of learn as much as possible in terms of how to navigate through this, this uncertain and risky environment. So, with that, let's get started. I mean, with Brexit, I mean, I always joke that, Brexit seems like this long developing drama or soap opera where the ending keeps just getting pushed out and out, So where are we today with Brexit, and why is it back in the headlines?
Thank you for the question. Well, by the time your viewers may see this, the situation may have changed already again. Huh? While I speak, the situation may change. So, yeah, you say the soap opera. It's really true. I'm in London here, right? So I live this. I've been living the soap opera for the last 3 years. Well, look, to cut a long story short, you know very well what happened 3 years ago. We had a referendum where the majority of voters decided to leave the European Union, this construct. They favored a departure. Then the UK served its notice on the 29th of March. That then started a 2-year process. And this year, on the 29th of March, did Brexit happen? No, it didn't. We decided on an extension. Then we decided on another extension. And now we're here. What's different now is that we have a new prime minister. And this prime minister, Boris Johnson, has changed tone, has changed policy, has changed attitude. And he is now determined to get the United Kingdom out of the European Union, no ifs or buts. In fact, he said, and I quote, he'd rather be dead in a ditch than to ask the European Union to prolong Brexit again. So he doesn't want to ask for an extension. The challenge, of course, is that the parliament doesn't agree. So his legislature, they have now passed a law that requires him legally to go to Brussels and ask for another extension until January 2020. He said he won't. So there is a lot of drama, I guess is the word, and uncertainty that originates from the UK. And it is as fascinating as a soap opera to watch, although it's, of course, unfortunate, bitter reality. Now, one thing people miss, though, is that it doesn't depend only on the UK. We have 27 member states that have to agree to this. And if you told your child twice not to touch the fire, and the third time it says to you, hey, I still want to touch my fire, what are you going to do? Maybe you let it touch the fire just so that you learn the lesson. So it is not only the question of the UK, whether this extension gets done, it is a question of the EU27, and the EU27 is relatively fed up with the whole thing. At the current point of time, we just don't know. Legally speaking, it's clear. If nothing else happened, departure is on the 31st of October at 11 p.m. or, that's British Standard Time, or 000, so midnight on the 1st of November. And that's your Brexit. That's where we are right now. Uncertainty and chaos ranges. But if you ask me to pinpoint it, the legal answer is 31st of October or Halloween.
Yeah, well, that is, for some, it's a very scary, proposition. I love your analogy of, the child and, not touching the fire. After a while, you go, okay, you're going to have to learn your lesson if you don't want to listen there. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's very interesting because despite all this ongoing drama, I mean, companies still have to plan for all sorts of different scenarios, right? So which makes it complex because it could go so many different directions, and depending on which direction it goes, that has implications on the supply chains in terms of how you manage your inventory, in terms of your orders, in terms of where you're sourcing from, in terms of contingency plans, and all sorts of things that. At the moment, obviously companies around the world, not only the EU, but even here in the US that trades with, the UK and trades with the European Union, are kind of stuck in a kind of this limbo, position. Now, one of those scenarios that you hear a lot about, and I think it's the one that your current prime minister is kind of, pushing, or at least he is the one that seems that might happen if nothing else, if it doesn't get delayed, is this, no deal, scenario. I mean, what does that mean, exactly? And then what are the implications if that is the scenario that it indeed happens?
So I don't want to correct you, obviously, because you're a great guy. But just to be very clear, because if Boris is now, Mr. Johnson, my PM, is listening to this, he will be terrified by you saying that he is favoring no deal. The formal position, of course, is that he is not favoring a no deal. He wants an agreement. But if there is no agreement, he's prepared to take the UK on its course outside the European Union. Now, no deal is the term that we use if, as I said, no agreement is reached with the European Union. And again, we love analogies. We need analogies to understand this complex Brexit. So take a divorce. When you divorce yourself from your partner, well, it can either be very abrupt and very hard, so we don't discuss who gets the dog, who gets half of the house or the inventory, or you have a settlement. That's a normal procedure. You agree who keeps the cat. So that's what the EU wants to do. They want a withdrawal agreement. Boris Johnson said, you know what? To my terms. And here are the terms. And the EU so far is not prepared to budge. So no deal is a reality. It is reality on the 31st of October, 11 o'clock, if nothing else is decided, if there's no withdrawal agreement. And it means, in terms of trade, the exit of the UK from the common structures, the common trading system established over more than 4 decades ago. It's a system of wholly harmonized customs procedures, of wholly harmonized trade rules. And there are no internal borders. There is a common external tariff. And if you think about it, take the US, for example. This is an ideal environment to flourish, to build business, to flourish, to grow, but also to connect with third-party logistics providers, distributors, retailers, warehouse operators across not only one country, but EU 28 countries. And then, so you really have choice. You can choose who to work with, whether that be in Greece, whether that be in Estonia. You choose who you want to work with, whatever prices you want to pay, whatever arrangements you want to make. You have choices. And this only works as long as the goods can freely move between the EU and the other member states, including the UK, without trade formalities. Imagine I would put a border between Texas and the rest. I mean, that would create impossible problems for supply chains and operators. So similar, this is here. So come Brexit Day, thousands pieces of legislations, including customs and trade, will no longer apply, affecting anything from road transport to standards, to trade, as I said, to commercial arrangements, to free movement of people, IP law, data, import and export controls. And don't forget, this no deal Brexit also means no divorce settlement, no withdrawal period where we, let it cool off, no cool off period if you want. We go straight into the hard stuff. So what happens if you leave the single market? What happens if you leave the customs union? What happens if you leave the European Court of Justice for jurisdiction and dispute settlement? Instead of this, the UK trade terms and arrangements with the broader world would be managed, would be governed by the World Trade Organization rules, the WTO. And these are very less detailed and are limited actually to just general trade matters and concepts. So a less than ideal situation, which will not resolve trade tensions and uncertainties for businesses, but I fear increase them. That's no deal Brexit.
Well, thank you for number one. Thank you for the correction on the Prime Minister's true position, because I think it's important to be accurate and factual. And again, I'm here in the States, and sometimes I miss things, and you're there on the ground, so you know the real deal there. So I appreciate the correction. And certainly I think when you think about the fact that you've been operating under the current model for decades. Right. And for all of it to kind of come to a halt, if you will, in terms of, like you said, all these existing regulations and standards and so forth to kind of get, tossed out and now have to come up with, new ways of working together, seemingly overnight under this, no deal scenario, is something that's, very, certainly very concerning. So what challenges ultimately does this create for supply chain leaders? I mean, in other words, why does this matter, to them? I mean, I think you've already painted a good reason why it matters, but, from a supply chain perspective, why should supply chain executives be paying attention to this?
Well, look, the easy answer, there's no easy answer, of course, but if we don't want to overcomplicate it, just put a border between countries, right? And that is challenging enough. Imagine that now you're not sure anymore what rules apply. Before it was nice and simple. I move goods from A to B. What's the problem? Now I'm telling you, you can't just move goods anymore. Instead, you're now changing the trading environment, and that will profoundly impact businesses. Because if you have all of these trucks now wishing to go to the UK, and you're telling me, wait a minute, here's a border now, please complete customs formalities, please, do you have the licenses? Please let me have border checks. And they weren't used to border checks. What's going to happen? The first truck has to stop, the second truck has to stop, and before you know, you have an endless line of trucks waiting to be customs cleared, because this is not a customs clearance system that is ready in 5 minutes. It takes years to build up customs infrastructure, and certainly at ports where there is absolutely none. We have seen examples of the impact, and actually tangible examples of what not managing your supply chain correctly due to this uncertainty, not by fault of the people, means. In the wake up to Brexit, we had decisions to stockpile goods in the UK in warehouses due to this customs border delay fear, in order to make sure that you could fulfill customers' orders and make sure that people get their stuff. So many people in the UK filled their warehouses to the roof. And then, of course, Brexit didn't happen. So all of these goods had to be discarded. In some cases, where there were perishable goods, that created millions of pounds, British pounds of damage. This can't happen again, especially not at the end of October when the houses are full for Christmas. This buffer stock of the warehouses to guarantee supply will not be available again the second or the third time round. And imagine the amount of money that was already spent on this. So in the wake of the Brexit deadline that now looms, we saw that these bottlenecks didn't materialize that we were expecting. The surplus eroded the profits, and the inventory was discarded and destroyed at additional costs. The uncertainty ranges, so supply chain leaders need to get back to the drawing board ASAP and need to consider the following questions. What will post-Brexit trading mean for you, and what is the trading environment that we will have to operate in? What additional costs do you expect? Where will be the expected bottlenecks, and how do I manage them? How do I navigate around them? And how do I change my supply chain in order to avoid these disruptions? And the answer to these cannot just come overnight. A strategy needs to be employed as to how you will create end-to-end supply chain visibility. And that's what Brexit means to supply chain leaders right now. Back to the drawing board, back at looking at supply chains and connecting the dots end to end, and figuring out then, once you have your supply chain visibility, what Brexit means.
Those are great questions and a great point. I mean, I think, for a lot of companies, particularly those that are more, progressive, like you said, a lot of them were planning for these, scenarios, and they took appropriate, what seemed like appropriate action, right? Let's bring inventory in as much as possible and so on and so forth. But then ultimately it got delayed, and that kind of backfired, if you will. So it was kind of an insurance plan that they took and didn't really work out because the outcome wasn't what they expected. So you would think that now that, if you're thinking along the same lines, they might be a little bit more hesitant to do the same thing, or it might not even be possible to do the same thing. To your point, this is around Christmas time and the holidays. So, the warehouse is already full with more of the holiday stuff that's during a normal importing, period. I mean, I've read articles here in terms of the pharmaceutical industry, right? In terms of, the number of, of drugs and medicines that the UK imports from, let's say, France, and those hours, days, months long delay that could happen as a result of, having a border now between the two countries. So, a lot of, risk and uncertainty there. And I think the questions you asked are really good ones. So, I mean, considering that it's, a little bit more than a month away, I mean, in addition to asking those questions that you asked, I mean, I think some of the things that, what actions can they take? I mean, is it working with some of the logistics service providers? Is it working with some of their partners overseas? I mean, what are some of the things that you're seeing or hearing that companies are taking, at least in the interim here, as October 31st approaches?
Yes, very good question. How do you work together with all the actors, the supply chains, the multiple actors that you have in your supply chain, hundreds of suppliers, hundreds of customers? We have to realize that we can't wait for the government to give us the instructions. We have guidance already. It is now time for the supply chain leaders to step up. And before you start reaching out to suppliers and customers, you need visibility you need to understand what the potential holdups are and plan for the alternatives. So first of all, visibility, then communications for sure, and even a stronger collaboration with the suppliers and the customers. So this is point two. You need to connect all these actors together in one strong supply chain to be able to say, all right, this is the impact. Now everybody do this. It's almost like the field marshal or the conductor in an orchestra, right? Where somebody has to lead the pack. Otherwise, everybody goes in different direction. What it will come down to, though, especially with large and complex companies. So first, visualize, then communicate. Then third, you need to have data. You need to have the intelligent data that can be read by intelligent systems, data that is not in one company, but that comes in from all your suppliers and all your customers. How else will you make the intelligent decisions that you need to make, right? And the challenge today is that you have multiple ERP systems, a patchwork of siloed applications, sometimes spreadsheets or manual processes to pull them all together. How will you make intelligent decision in such a complex world? And today, often, there is no centralized way to bring this data together. And once you have the data, make it machine readable so that it can be used in decision making and pushed through intelligent applications that then enable this decision making. And in the context of Brexit, that means, of course, being able to say which supply chains do I need to change, which partners may I need to change, which customers may need to go. So we need to move away from this patchwork of siloed applications and connect everything to a platform to enable visibility. That same platform, I would like to be a communicator. And that platform, I would like to make use of the incoming data in an intelligent way so I can drive more efficient and Brexit relevant decisions. And I think if we think about that kind of platform, that one platform that brings it all together, visibility, communication, and efficient data, that's going to get us ready for Brexit.
No, great points. And I'm a big proponent of that model. I mean, like I talked earlier, when you think about, particularly from a global supply chain standpoint, where you've got, many trading partners, whether it's suppliers, customers, customs agencies that are going to be involved, logistics service providers, and so forth, having them all operating on a common platform to be able to share information, share data, share information, have that visibility to what's going on. That's going to enhance greater collaboration, because I think one of the things that, that's coming out of all of this is, to your point, every company can't just be doing this on their own. I mean, they really have to, we talk a lot about collaboration in supply chain, but a lot of times we don't walk the talk. I mean, this is an example where the industry truly needs to walk the talk in collaboration, because, this is the only way to successfully navigate, through all of this. One of the things we really didn't talk about, but again, considering the technology implications, right? So from a global, I talked about the 3 C's of global trade management, right? There's not just the software, but there's the content, the connectivity, and the compliance aspect. I mean, a lot of what, companies like E2Open bring to the table is the fact that, you help codify some of these customs regulations into the software to help automate and streamline clearance and so forth. But that all changes, right? Because now that's yet to be defined if we have a no deal, and now all these processes have to, come into play. So from a technology or software provider or content provider, someone that manages and stays on top of all this content and has to ensure compliance, that's going to affect you guys as well, true?
Yes, of course. So it is a question when trade regulations change, when complexities become great, when overnight think of a no deal scenario, the UK trade tariff changes and import regulations change. How are you going to navigate that? How are you going to prepare for that? Manually is impossible. You need someone who is able to find the legislation, codify the legislation, and update it in your system. So when you come to the office on the 1st of November, it is all ready for you. And that's what we provide, quite obviously, in E2Open. It is a challenge that, if you think about it, may be very obvious in the case of Brexit, right? A big change of regulations. So you need to adopt your system. You need to adopt your relations with the freight agents to make sure you are importing and exporting in a compliant fashion. But Brexit's not the only example, right? Look at the US. There is so much headwind right now in trade wars, as it is called, with China. Regulations change all the time. What are you going to do? Are you going to be the one that sits in front of a computer looking after regulation after regulation to understand what has changed now, and 5 hours later you didn't get any work done? That's not possible, is it? Especially by the time you finish, it's already out of date. Brexit highlights this problem. The problem that you need trade content to be up to date, timely, and real-time based as much as possible. And so having a system like this, having a system that feeds trade compliance data, that is read by a powerful, intelligent application, and then enables intelligent decision-making, is the next thing that we require. Now, add to this orchestra of suppliers and customers, all networked together, and you're really preparing yourself for much more than Brexit. You're saying Brexit is the event where I will start to think in this way. But whenever the next Brexit, God forbid, or the next trade war, or the next uncertainty happens, I will be ready, because I didn't see Brexit as a single event. I saw it as the catalyzer for changing the way I operate and changing the way I manage my supply chain. So it is away from siloed thinking, away from seeing Brexit as one problem, to Brexit almost as the solution for all my future supply chain problems that I may see. And if you can turn Brexit from challenge into opportunity, well, then you're truly ready for Brexit and anything else that happens.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think you just answered, my last question. We're kind of, time to wrap up here, but I think the point you just made kind of alludes to what was going to be my last question, which, as you said, Brexit is what's happening here in the U.S. It's kind of what's in the moment, if you will, and what's in the headlines today. But it's only one of, many risks and uncertainties that supply chain leaders are going to have to face, are going to continue to face, moving forward, especially in the global trade realm. So ultimately, what will separate the leaders from the laggards when it comes to successfully navigating through whatever disruptive events happen in the future?
What a great question. And I think you're right. I think what I've just said is, in fact, the answer to this. It is taking a step back. You can get wrapped up in Brexit. You can discuss it left, right, and center, and you still not find a solution. You need to step back. If it gets too complex, make it simple. Step a step back and say, where's the opportunity? Where is in all of this chaos, where is the chance? And the chance is to say, we're going to see Brexit as one event, but not the event. And we're not going to prepare for just Brexit and change everything to be Brexit ready. We're going to say, what options do we have to create higher agility, reduce risks permanently, and, very importantly, improve the bottom line? Yes, we need to act in these three ways. Risks must go down, money must go up, and agility must stay or improve. And it is with end-to-end supply chain visibility. It works with fantastic, modern, powerful, intelligent tools, like you mentioned, our such as our global knowledge or trade content being captured and then being changed so that it fits into the business operations of any business, really. And you can run business operations and meet the trade regulations and then spill out intelligent solutions, as in import license required, free to go, what are the duty implications. So it's visibility, end-to-end supply chain visibility, it is intelligent and potent applications, and it is the ability to bring all of this data together and make decisions based on the data, that the real-time data that you see powered by these applications. Then you can be the chief of the orchestra and orchestrate your supply chain in ways needed, and you can change that orchestration depending on the global trade events, the headwinds, the trade wars, the Brexits of this world. Whenever needed, set up like this, you can react to what's going on in the world. And I see that as the only way forward if we want to grow global trade in the 22nd century. Together, networked, optimized, demand, supply, all together. We need to change the way we think, and Brexit is the catalyzer to do that, in my opinion.
That's a great insight there. I mean, I think, when you look at these these things like Brexit, looking at them as not only a challenge or a problem or something to resolve, but really, like you said, taking a step back and say, hey, here's an opportunity. We talk a lot about digital transformation, for example. A lot about digital transformation is about taking a step back and looking to see where is there waste in our current processes, right? Where are we using Excel spreadsheets? Where are we throwing people at a problem and typing in stuff? Where are we still using paper and so forth? I mean, these are all things that we know that companies can't continue to succeed, using these manual processes, operating in silos like they have historically and so forth. So this is the type of thing that serves as a catalyst to address these challenges that companies have had for decades. And now is really the time to, really seriously address these issues, because that's the only way you're going to not only succeed around Brexit, but succeed around whatever comes down the road after that. So, Arne, we're out of time here, but I think you provided some, particularly for this very timely and important topic and very meaty topic, you provided some great insights and advice for our audience. So again, thank you for making the time to be with us today.
Of course. My great pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Great. I want to thank those of you that joined us. If you're watching this episode on demand, either at the Talking Logistics website or at the E2Open website, and you've got any questions or comments for Arne, you can post them there, and I'm sure he'll be more than happy to respond via that medium.
Of course.
Again, thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you in a future episode of Talking Logistics. Have a great day.